What is the real reason behind the US-Venezuela crisis? Why US has again decided to restore democracy in yet another nation? And why the impacts of this crisis are limited for India but not for the global scenario. The US-Venezuela conflict is not just a regional political crisis. It sits at the intersection of international law, geopolitics, energy security, and most importantly, India's economic security as well. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to understand that why did US decide to attack yet another country in the name of democracy, what are the real drivers behind it, what are the global impacts of this particular crisis, and most importantly, is India insulated from the impacts that we are expecting at the global level. So let us begin with understanding that what exactly has unfolded with this very new year. So when we are talking about the start of this year, we just saw that United States went ahead and not just attacked Venezuela, but it also went ahead and captured Nicolás Maduro, that is President of Venezuela, and he was transported to the US. Now this was the first time that we are seeing a direct regime decapitation. This is the first time that we are seeing a direct regime decapitation style, especially in Latin America, and we have not seen something like this in decades. And this is the time where we see that US is basically marking that we are not going to rely only on sanctions and diplomacy to get what we want. There will be interventions and hard power would also be used. And when we are talking about such an action by such a huge economy on its almost neighbor country here, we get to see that it will have global impact for two big reasons. First, Venezuela happens to hold world's largest reserves, that means more than Saudi Arabia, and this is happening when we are in the times of fragile global recovery. And because Venezuela is an oil producer, this will also have an impact on global oil market. Now to understand in detail the impacts and everything that comes ahead with it, let us get into understanding that what does Venezuela's oil economy looks like. So if you talk about the oil reserves, as I have mentioned, Venezuela holds world's largest oil reserves. The proven given reserves that are seen that are more than Saudi Arabia and UAE itself, and Venezuela stands at the highest position here. However, in terms of production, Venezuela does not share the same stature, but here we get to understand that what is the potential with Venezuela in terms of resources. And if any country tries to set up a camp here, they would be part of sharing or utilizing this resource. Now, when we talk about production, as I mentioned that over the years, when we are talking about the production, it has not matched the same stature in terms of the reserves that are present in Venezuela, but still Venezuela is a heavily oil revenue dependent economy where 90% of export earnings come from oil itself. But the problem with this economy, there are certain structural weaknesses because there is an underinvestment which is associated, because as there has been only investment of almost 150 billion since 2000. That means in last 25 years there has been no great investment to ensure that the potential resource which is present and how it can be utilized. Furthermore, there have been multiple sanctions that have been incoming towards Venezuela, and the source, there are no marks for guessing that, US, which have restricted not only the finance but also the technology that could have helped them here. And adding more to the problem was the collapse of their state-owned oil and gas company, that is PDVSA. And with this, they saw the collapse of operational capacity across the nation as well. So all in all, what we get to see, what is in front of us, that yes, Venezuela holds strong oil reserves, but has Venezuela been able to turn it into good economics and good profits and good numbers? Not so much. So what is with Venezuela is energy superpower in geology, but it seems like a failed state if you look at the economics of it, and that is what leaves a vacuum which makes it more vulnerable for the powers, other regional powers, external powers to step in. And this vacuum was aptly utilized by US, and US has very clear official reasons to step into the situation, and petroleum, oil and gas are not one of the reasons. So when US was giving the justification or the reasons to enter, they are telling that they want to address the drug trafficking problem, that is the narco-terrorism that is going on. They are the ones who want to address the migration and also border pressure, because Venezuela is blamed for the regional instability and migration in Southern American region. Furthermore, democracy is another slogan that US has for long term used, be it for entering Iraq, be it for entering Afghanistan, and this is another time where they have declared the 2024 elections that happened in Venezuela, they are not credible, and that is why they want to restore democracy. All in all, the structural framing of this attack has been that they have to look at it as a law enforcement and counter-terror operation. But this is one thing that is being put in forth, but actual real drivers of this attack are very different. Now, when we are talking about the real drivers, we need to understand that the main real driver of this situation is the energy security part. As I mentioned, I have already done it in detail, that Venezuela holds a long-term supply potential that is almost of 2 million barrels per day. That is the potential that Venezuela can gradually go up to. And in this context, US has very clear strategic goals, that it can secure heavy crude for Gulf Coast refineries, and it can easily reduce dependence on the Middle Eastern as well as OPEC plus supply discipline, because these as a group are very strong together and challenge US in its hegemony and such behavior as well. And to add to that, this is a very favorable situation for US, because US refineries, they are designed for heavy crude. And if you remember, we had just discussed when we were talking about Venezuela's oil economy, we got to understand that here we have predominantly extra heavy crude. So this is absolutely suitable for especially US and their refineries. Furthermore, it adds to the recent sentiment that have been sent up by President Donald Trump that US oil firms will invest billions, and it will have a reason to invest, where the Venezuelan oil will be sourced and supplied to these firms and refineries, where the US can have advantage of yet another state which was not probably democratically broken, but US labeled it so to gain the strategic advantages. So here we get to see that energy security is being pursued through security projection and not just tapping in the markets and investment. So US is also using geopolitics, US is using force to ensure energy security for themselves. And the reason we are diving in such great detail, because this will further give us in clarity in terms of impact that it will create. Now, when we are talking about impact, let us straight away move to understand the first thing, that how it is going to impact the global oil market, because this is where the whole question has started off. So, if we look at today's scenario, the global oil demand stands somewhere around 100 million barrels per day, and Venezuela's contribution in terms of share is merely just 1%. And because of the bent crude movement, so before the attack, the prices were somewhere around $58 to $60 per barrel. Now after attack, we get to see some movement towards 60 to 65 per barrel. So there is no major price shock. So you can find the answer first here, that the share of Venezuela's oil is limited, but because they are into production of heavy crude oil, there has been movement in Brent crude, we get to see that there has been no price shock. Further reasons associated with the fact there has been no huge price movement is the fact that Venezuelan supplies was already very discounted to escape the sanctions that were placed on the country. And furthermore, the global inventories as of now are in no panic, they are very comfortably placed. So, because there is no increased demand, the crisis situation does not seem that difficult. That is why the prices are not moving. Whenever you get to see the movement in global oil market or markets in general, they basically react to marginal supply loss than the theoretical reserves that are present. And this scenario, this is a clear plain picture in front of us. Now, apart from the global oil market, there is a huge impact that we will be getting to see on other markets. Overall global financial market, for example, we have seen jump in safe haven metals such as gold, where the demand has risen and there is price increase as well. Furthermore, when we talk about equities, we have found that energy stocks, because of the chaos and confusion, they remain volatile. Furthermore, if you are talking about financial market, we have to bring in currencies as well, because this is a situation where we are seeing dollar is being strengthened in risk of environment. We will also find impact on other currencies. So, if the demand of dollar goes stronger, which it shouldn't, because this is a chaotic time, risky time, so demand of dollar takes a dip and safe haven metals go above in demand. But if dollar is strengthening because of the bold move that is seen from the US end, we can see some impact on other currencies as well. So, overall, the starting point is the geopolitics. It is going to impact oil, which as of now has not occurred, but in gradual meantime, this will also happen. And this oil price will increase the inflation expectation, which will increase the interest rates, and this increased interest rate will ensure capital outflow, especially from developing countries. So, as of now, in short term, we don't see something happening, but larger things will unfold if this crisis is not controlled. And who will be at the problematic point, who will suffer the most? It would be developing countries, it would be high value oil importers, and especially the countries which have weak current account balance, because once the oil prices rise, the inflation hikens up. This is where we get to see there will be a huge impact on the balance of payment as well. Now that we have a fair idea that what exactly has happened and how it might result in terms of consequences, let us also take into consideration that what are the other external powers which were involved in the situation. So, when we are talking about external powers, it was not just US. There have been other external powers which have been involved in the situation, such as Russia, China, and US's move is to basically neutralize their effort, because if you talk about China, China has already invested $50 billion since 2007 in Venezuela, and they have long-term supply agreements. So, once Venezuela is under attack, this remains in question. Furthermore, this US's action will impact China's energy diversification strategy, and it will also dim Beijing's influence, especially in Latin America. Other than that, we also see that Russia and Cuba had invested interest in Venezuela's capital, that is Caracas. And this is where again America has gone ahead and destroyed and put it in a questionable place. So, all in all, Venezuela happens to be a proxy arena where we are seeing US and China rivalry, and US is coming out standing in this situation. And whenever we are talking about energy, we cannot separate it from geopolitics. All the involvement of these powers is for one simple thing, that is energy security in the longer run, which can be facilitated with diplomacy, geopolitics and whatnot. Now, on this note that we have a fair idea of other external powers, now let us understand that where is India positioned and where is India's economy positioned amidst all this. So, when we are talking about India's and Venezuela trade, which is going to be the main point of deciding what kind of impact that India will have, in this we get to see in last 2 decades, India has gradually reduced the dependence in terms of oil from Venezuela. If you talk about the time between 2010 to 14, we used to have 3 to 4% of imports from Venezuela. As of now, in last 2 years, it has been almost negligible. So, if we are talking about the crude that we import, we have partners from Middle East, we have Russia on our plate, we have Africa and America as well. And furthermore, the refinery system that we have developed in the country, we have kept it flexible to ensure that we are able to process diverse crude grade, be it Brent crude, be it heavy crude. So our refinery is not rigid in this scenario, that if we have to make changes to the basket, the refinery capabilities will suffer. As a result of the fact that we are not dependent on Venezuela for crude at all, we are not seeing any impact in terms of supply shock as of now. But that doesn't mean we are insulated forever. This will result into impacts in coming time, because gradually, if this crisis is not dialed down, oil price channel will be impacted. And the moment per barrel rise increases in terms of dollar, we'll get to see that our current account deficit will worsen, and this oil inflation, the oil price increase, will also result in inflation at the consumer level gradually at 0.3 to 0.4%. So this is going to happen when there is change of $10 per barrel. Imagine more changes in that. So yes, in long term and medium term, there is a lot on plate, but as of now, the impact is muted or insulated because the price per barrel is still below $70. We are still getting discounted oil from Russia, and government still has pricing buffers available with them. Government is very comfortable with the reservoirs they are holding as of now, no panic situation. That is why there is no immediate impact that we are seeing in India. But this doesn't mean that we hold long-term immunity. We might need to prepare for better insulation in the medium term and long term as well. Now on this note, I'll be concluding by drawing two important conclusions here. First, that we learned from Venezuela that resource abundance will not bring in economic strength. Second, that energy security for any country is very strategic and it is not commercial, and India's diversification strategy has become a strategic asset as of now. Now, what are your thoughts on this particular attack that has been carried out by US? Let me know in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.